The law school with the highest LSAT median in the country will now let you in without your ever taking the LSAT. Washington University in St. Louis, their median LSAT score is a 175, the highest LSAT median out of all 196 ABA accredited law schools. And starting now, they will take you without taking the LSAT. So the LSAT, the test that built their entire reputation, is now just one option on a menu. And they're not alone. The ABA just cleared 14 other law schools to go even further and admit students with no admissions test at all. They include Texas A&M, Arizona State, and George Mason. The headlines all say the same thing: the LSAT is finally dead. But WashU, the school guarding a 175 median, is the very proof that the LSAT is not dead, because nobody protects a number that hard and then quietly stops caring about it. So today, I'm going to show you the one number that decides your scholarship before a human being ever reads a single word of your application. And I'll walk you to the exact spot, down to a point or two, where the LSAT stops being a test and turns into scholarship money. And I'll show you why the schools are the ones who win when you take the word optional at face value and skip the LSAT. Now, there is one situation where skipping the test is actually the smart move, only one. Most people get it backwards. And that's the single most expensive mistake in this whole process. Now, here is the thing that almost nobody gets about how the word optional actually works. Every law school in the country is quietly obsessed with one scoreboard, being the US News rankings. And you would assume the test that built their reputation sits right at the top of the formula, but it doesn't. This year, a school's median LSAT score counts for only 5% of the ranking. Most of the weight has shifted to outcomes like employment and bar passage rates. And so you might hear the phrase 5% and say, see, the LSAT barely matters anymore. And I get it, but that's not true. Because out of everything a school can actually change about its incoming class, the LSAT median is the single biggest piece. It matters more than GPA and more than their acceptance rate. And it's the one number a dean can move in a single cycle just by writing scholarship checks. They can't fix their employment rate by spring. They can't fix bar passage rates overnight. Those take years. But the median LSAT is a number they can buy this fall. Now, look at WashU again. They've got a 175 LSAT median, and they did not get there by accident. You can see how they got there if you follow the money. When WashU goes after a student that another top school also wants, they've put scholarship offers on the table as high as $144,000. A comparable school could offer that same student roughly half that. That's the school paying cash to protect a number. And that process is only speeding up. Across the country, law school LSAT medians keep climbing up year after year. The arms race is getting hotter. Now think about what that does to the schools. They can't all climb at once, so every cycle they're bidding against each other for the same pool of top scorers, the same way a sports team bids for a free agent. A school sitting at a 168 sees a 171 walk in and knows that one person's going to nudge their medians up, which will nudge up their rankings, which will protect their applications for the future and their tuition next year. And so they pay for that student because they're stuck in a bidding war they can't walk away from without sliding down the list. And a bidding war is a terrible thing to be stuck inside. But from your perspective as the applicant, being the prize, you are a hot commodity and you're going to get a lot of scholarship money because the school will pay in real dollars to enroll someone whose LSAT is above their median because that person will move their median up. So your score is not just the key to getting, it's like a coupon getting you scholarship money, and the school's the one paying you for it. So let me make this real with a person. Let's call her Maya. Maya's got a 165 LSAT score. It's pretty solid. She's looking at George Mason, which is one of those 14 schools that took the ABA's deal to go test optional. And Maya's thinking, great, maybe I don't even need this score. So let's look at what her 165 will do for her at George Mason. George Mason's median LSAT is a 169. Their 75th percentile is a 171. Their 25th is a 162. And so Maya at a 165 is above their floor, but below their median. She could probably get in, but the money is going to be thin. Now, students near the bottom of the class at George Mason get around $14,000 a year, Students near the top get around $32,000 a year. It's the same school, the same class. But there is an $18,000 a year gap between those two people. And the thing that sorts you into the top or the bottom is your numbers, with the LSAT carrying more weight than the GPA. Now, let's say Maya doesn't skip the test. She does the opposite. She retakes the LSAT, puts in the time, goes from a 165 to a 171. She improves her score 6 points. And that's not easy, it takes time. But with a 171, she's now at the 75th percentile, at the top of the scholarship range, now getting $32,000 a year over the course of 3 years. That's approximately $96,000 a year in grant money from one retake on a test that they told her she could skip. That's almost $100,000. And that's more than a discount. Discount's not even really the appropriate word here. It's the difference between starting your career owing nothing and starting it owing more than some mortgages. And it turned all on 6 points. So here's what you should do going forward given all of this. Every American Bar Association law school is forced to publish something called a 509 report. It's free and publicly available. You could find it with a Google search on the ABA's website. That 509 report includes 3 numbers for every school: the 25th percentile LSAT, the median LSAT, and the 75th percentile LSAT. And you want to look where your LSAT score lands. If you are above a school's 75th percentile, they're going to pay you to join. So you negotiate. If you're right at the median, you're probably getting in, but you're not going to get much scholarship money, if any. If you're below the median, but still above the 75th, you could get in with a strong file, but don't bank on it. So you want to look at a couple of schools ranges: the safety schools where you're above the medians, targets where you're at the medians, and reaches where you're below the medians. You apply to a wide range, and then wherever you get in, you say to the school, hey, I'd love to come here, but I've got higher offers from comparable schools. Is there any room to make your school competitive, your offer competitive? And that will work at schools fighting over their medians, which is most of them. It works less at the very top, of course. The top schools like Harvard, Yale, Stanford are in a bidding war, and they're not even giving merit aid, but other schools in the T14 will give merit aid, including, for example, UCLA, Georgetown, USC, even Columbia and NYU offer merit money. And you want to apply earlier in the cycle, all else being equal, because when you apply earlier, there's more scholarship money available, and it's also easier to get in. And speaking now, you've got plenty of time before applications open in the fall. You could retake the LSAT in August, September, October, November, and still apply to law school this cycle. Now, if your LSAT score is not where you wanted it to be, of course, there's a simple solution: just retake. It could save you 6 figures in scholarship money. If you want my help getting that LSAT score up, getting more scholarship money, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. You can book that free tutoring with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. It's a quick reference on everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension, covering every LSAT section, every LSAT question type. It's a free download. You can grab it in the link in my bio, the link below the video as well. Now, I see some questions in the chat. I'll get to as many of those as I can. Feel free to drop them in, anything at all, LSAT and law school admissions. I see SB is asking, where do we find scholarships to apply for? If you just Google law school scholarships, you'll find a bunch of organizations, but really the primary way to get scholarship money for law school is from the law school itself. If you apply with strong numbers, if your LSAT score and your GPA, one or ideally both of them, are above the medians of the law schools that you're targeting, you give the law school incentive to give you scholarship money because you're going to raise their standing in the US News rankings by applying with higher numbers. If they can report strong numbers from your profile, you're going to help them attract more applicants for the future, help them raise their standing in the rankings, increase the prestige of the school, help them get more money from donors. And so that's really the number one place to get scholarships. You might get $500 here or $1,000 there from some of these external scholarships, but for the most part, law school scholarships come from the law school itself. Rec is asking, is a 3.4 GPA with a 160 LSAT possible to get in somewhere? Yes, you can certainly get in somewhere. There are nearly 200 ABA accredited law schools, plenty of options available to you. The question is, will this get you into a law school worth going to? To be frank, a 3.4 GPA is on the lower side because grade inflation is out of control. So there are many law schools with GPA medians above a 3.4, and so the GPA might pull down your odds a little bit, meaning you want to offset that lower GPA with a higher LSAT score. And so if you could get your LSAT up to 165 or 170, you're going to do a lot to boost up your odds of admission and getting scholarship money as well. So I would encourage you, retake the LSAT, take it again in August or September, October, November. It's well worth putting in the work for a retake. Same goes for C-Dial asking, should I retake 154 LSAT, 3.5 GPA, just want T100? So roughly same GPA, slightly lower LSAT. I would encourage you to retake. I mean, could you get into a T100 law school? Probably, but will you get scholarship money? I don't want you paying sticker for a school ranked 75 or 100. I don't see any reason to do that. If you can get your LSAT up, you'll get more scholarship money, get into better schools, or both. ABC's asking, is a 158 diagnostic LSAT good? Let's define good. I mean, is it going to help you achieve your goals? What kind of law schools do you want to go to? What's your undergraduate GPA? How important are scholarships to you? All of those factors will determine whether a 158 will serve your interests. Now, when you say diagnostic, I could interpret that to mean it's a cold diagnostic, like you haven't really studied yet. If it's a cold diagnostic without any studying so far, that's fantastic. It's higher than my cold diagnostic was. I started off at a 152. I ended up at a 175 after a lot of hard work. If I'd done it properly, I could have gotten there a lot faster. And so you can improve significantly. You can get a top score. Just put in the time, put in the work. But anyone watching this can take or retake the LSAT in August or September and apply to law school early in the cycle. And so speaking now in June, I don't see any reason not to put in the work for a take in August or September to get your score up 5, 10, 15, 20 points or more. SB's asking, so from what I'm understanding, the law schools have to offer scholarships. We can't apply for them. So in most cases, you're not formally applying for a scholarship. The law school will offer you a discount on tuition based on the strength of your numbers. So there's no separate scholarship application for the most part. There could be here or there for particular programs, but generally speaking, the way law schools work is they offer you admission, and in many cases, that offer of admission comes with a scholarship offer attached. And if there is no scholarship offer attached, or you don't like the number they give you, you can negotiate, and you are in fact expected to negotiate. It would be silly of you not to negotiate, just given how much money is on the table here. I mean, if the cost of attendance of law school could be as high as $80,000 per year for 3 years, $240,000 in total, it's rounded to $250,000. It would be a missed opportunity to fail to send some emails trying to knock off a significant chunk of that. A couple of emails back and forth could be the easiest money you'll ever make in terms of getting you a significant discount on your tuition, maybe even a full ride. But a lot of the work happens before you get to that point, before you send the email, before you have the offer of admission. If you can make your application to the law school with strong numbers already, then you're coming in with a more powerful negotiating or bargaining position because you are a more attractive applicant. And so it starts now, this summer, by you studying for the LSAT, taking it in the fall or late summer, applying with a higher LSAT score. Your GPA is probably pretty fixed at this point. I'm guessing if you're applying to law school this fall, you're late in college or already graduated, so you're not really going to change your GPA at this stage, but the LSAT score is 1 day, 2.5 hours, and it weighs more heavily than all of undergrad combined. And so your prep for a retake in particular could be as little as taking 1 practice test a week, reviewing it in depth. That's all you've got to do to get your score up. And I see Rec is asking about need-based scholarships. Yes, law schools do offer need-based scholarships as well, based on your tax returns, your FAFSA equivalent, for example. Not a whole lot you're going to necessarily do to change that. I mean, really, your income is what it is. Your situation is what it is. But the LSAT is a way that you can put yourself in an even better position to get more money out of them on the merit-based side. God's Face is asking, Are there any law schools that give full rides that guarantee big law? I don't know that a law school can guarantee you big law because they're two separate institutions. There's the law school itself, which is educating you, getting you towards your JD. Big law is the law firm that's offering you employment. A law school cannot offer you employment in big law because they don't have the ability to make that offer. It's not their purview. It's not their scope, right? So it's up to the law firm to decide whether to make you an offer of employment. And it's up to the law school to make you an offer of admission. Now, there are some law schools that have better big law placement than others. For example, Columbia Law in New York is noteworthy for its high big law placement numbers. And so we could say that if you go to Columbia Law, you're in a pretty good position to get a job in big law relative to some other law schools that have lower big law placement numbers. But there are no guarantees necessarily. But if you go to a top law school that is known for big law placement and you maintain high grades, you interview well, you pass the bar, then you've got a good shot. I see Northern Biscuits asking, would a median LSAT carry you enough with a low, I'm guessing you mean GPA, for a certain school? So I'm guessing, I think what you're asking here is, would a sufficiently high LSAT score serve to offset a low GPA? I would say, yeah. I mean, your LSAT score weighs more heavily than your undergraduate GPA. And so if your GPA is not what you would have liked it to be, a higher LSAT score can make up the difference, so to speak. I'm just scanning through for questions I may have missed here. Malik is asking about the pricing for our LSAT coaching. Okay, so we offer personalized LSAT prep programs. What we offer is not a one size fits all because everybody's got a different starting point. Everyone's got a different goal score, a different time frame, different availability in terms of how much studying they can put in per day and per week. And so we create personalized coaching programs. The way our services work is we give you private one-on-one coaching, just you and your coach. You can schedule those sessions directly on your coach's calendar any time of day, any day of the week, including evenings and weekends. We also create for you a custom study plan, personalized to you, laying out exactly what to do every single day from now till the test. You also get live small group sessions in the evening. Those are all optional though, all recorded for any that you can't make live. And you also get access to our comprehensive on-demand course as well. But the particulars are determined based on your schedule, your goals, and your time frame. And so if you want to talk through what a personalized coaching program could look like to get you to your goal score by your target test date, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me personally. The link to book that tutoring lesson is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. That's an open offer for everybody watching this now and later. If you're just getting started, I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your prep. It's a quick reference on everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension. You can grab that below the video and in my bio as well. I see Jay Stacey's asking, I woke up sick today. Sorry to hear that. Got my LSAT on Saturday. If I'm still sick, how would a makeup test work? Do I still take it on Saturday or should I skip it altogether? I mean, if you're sick, I would not recommend taking the LSAT because you're unlikely to achieve your fullest potential if you're under the weather. So I'm sorry to hear the timing is unfortunate here. I mean, depending on what you're sick with, hopefully you'll be better by Friday, Saturday, and you could still take it. But if not, I would not go ahead with it. I would withdraw from the LSAT and postpone to a later date. The makeup would be whenever you retake it, which could be August or September, for example. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And you'll be doing yourself a disservice if you take it when you're not firing on all cylinders. We want you at 110% ideally when you sit down to take it. And so I would recommend just pushing off till August or September if you need to. The good news is if you take the LSAT in August, scores come back at the end of August, and you can still apply to law school. The second application's open in September. I see Malik is asking, is the LSAT learnable if you lock in? 110%, definitely. I mean, the LSAT is a test of pattern recognition. It's a test of skills, not something you can memorize, but you don't need to. But it's not flashcards. It's not cramming. It's just familiarity with the patterns being tested, the methods of reasoning being tested, the different LSAT question types. In logical reasoning, for example, you've got 15 or so different kinds of questions, including strength and weaken, flaw, parallel, resolve, and so on. There's also reading comprehension to work on, and then there's pacing and time management, doing individual sections and full length exams to build up your endurance. And so, what we do for our students is we create for you a personalized study plan, laying out exactly what to do every single day from now till your test. We lay out when to drill questions by type, when to do timed sections, when to take full length exams as test day approaches. And when you've got roughly, say, 10 weeks or so till your test, we'll have you spend a few weeks on building the foundation, a few weeks doing timed sections, and then a few weeks focused on taking full length timed practice tests. But the goal being that by the time you take your official LSAT, you've seen it all. There's nothing new under the sun, and whatever they throw your way, you'll be able to pattern match it to what you've done in the past. And so that way you're not reasoning through things for the first time on test day under timed conditions when it really counts. And so it is learnable. That's how students improve their scores 10, 15, 20, 30 points. Not saying it happens overnight, not a promise or a guarantee, of course. Ultimately, your improvement is going to be a function of the amount that you study and the way in which you study, which is why I'm not giving last minute test day tips the day of or the day prior. I've got videos on YouTube about that if you want the general rundown, but ultimately, I don't like to promise overnight success. The biggest gains are going to come from giving yourself a couple weeks or a couple of months to achieve your highest potential increase between now and your target test date. I see Andrew's asking, does the school you go to really matter if you don't want to work in big law? I mean, I would think that big law is one of the areas of practice where the prestige of the law school matters the most. But where you go to law school can also matter, for example, if you want to work in academia, if you want to get a clerkship, prestige matters there as well. And then if you want to work elsewhere in an area where prestige is not quite as important, like a smaller firm, for example, or a family practice, then it would actually be wise to consider going to a lower ranked law school where you can get more scholarship money, maybe even a full ride. In other words, you don't want to take on all that debt. SB is asking, if we are applying this cycle, when should we be done submitting our applications? So law school admissions is conducted on a rolling basis, meaning that law schools can evaluate your application in the order in which they receive your application. And so applying earlier is better than applying later, because when you apply earlier, it's a bit easier to get in. There's also more scholarship money available. And so speaking now in June, there is no reason why you couldn't submit your applications in September. I would say take the LSAT in June or August, maybe September if you need to, then apply as soon as you get your score back when applications open, ideally. You could apply later in the cycle. If it's better to apply a little bit later with a higher score than earlier with a lower score. And so let's say you take the LSAT in August or September, it doesn't go your way, and you've got to retake in October or November. That's okay. It's not too late. You could even take the LSAT in January or February, but I would avoid it if you can. And speaking now in June, there's no reason that you couldn't knock it out sooner. Virgie is asking, will a master's degree help you get into law school? Not so much. A lot of folks asking about master's degrees are typically asking about their master's GPA, hoping that the master's GPA will offset the undergraduate GPA. Not saying you're asking this, but folks often wonder about this. And the answer is, unfortunately, that your master's GPA is not factored into the law school admissions index, where they're running formulas to calculate your chances. Only your undergraduate GPA counts, not the master's GPA, because the undergraduate GPA is what law schools submit to the American Bar Association, which in turn is where US News pulls their data from for inclusion in the rankings. And so law schools will see your master's degree for context. They'll see the GPA for context, but it works like a soft factor rather than a quantified factor, so it won't carry the same weight. Rec is asking, when should one start working on other aspects of the application, like personal statements and letters of recommendation? I wouldn't start thinking about the personal statement yet at the expense of your LSAT score, because your LSAT is going to weigh more heavily then your personal statement. The rec letter is the one thing I would think about earlier, though, because that's the one component you're relying on someone else to do for you. And so I would request that early. Ask your professors from spring semester now, if you can, while you're still fresh in their memories, before you and them get busy with whatever you've got going on this summer. Request it now. So in case it takes them some time, you'll be able to follow up a couple of times, bug them about it for them to send it in, and you won't be waiting on them to send in your rec letter when you're ready to hit submit on your applications. Brandon's asking, I'm a rising junior, sitting around a 3.8 GPA. Any suggestions graduating a semester early? So awesome. Congrats on the 3.8. Congrats on graduating early. That's awesome. My biggest advice would be maintain a high GPA, get it even higher if you can. Since you're a rising junior, you could start thinking about the LSAT. Not saying you got to start seriously studying yet, but keep in mind that your LSAT score is good for 5 years. And so even if you were to take it in the next couple months or so, your LSAT will still be good a year or so from now when you want to start applying to law school. But GPA first and foremost, when you're earlier in college, maintain that, raise it up, then switch gears to the LSAT. Esco's asking, can a well put together personal statement offset a low LSAT? Unfortunately not. Law school admissions is primarily numbers based, numbers driven. It's your LSAT score, then your GPA, everything else being a distant third. And so a GPA can help to offset a low LSAT. Put another way, a better way really would be a higher LSAT can offset a lower GPA, because the LSAT is the most important factor. GPA number 2, everything else a distant third. And so the best way to offset a low LSAT is by retaking and getting a higher LSAT score. In other words, the LSAT offsets the lower LSAT because you can retake the LSAT. It's offered 8 times a year, every other month or so. Coming up, we've got beyond June, August, September, October, November. The LSAT's offered 4 consecutive months this fall, and only the highest LSAT score on your record counts. That means there is no downside to retaking the LSAT, because if you do worse, no big deal. If you do better, congrats, now you've got a higher score on your record that you can submit. So I wouldn't bank on your personal statement making that much of a difference. It's a soft factor, not quantified in the same way. I would focus more on getting the higher LSAT score at the end of the day. As for where to get practice tests for the LSAT, I see Logan's asking. The best source is the official Law School Admission Council Law Hub platform. They've put every official LSAT on there, available online in the digital format. You get 4 practice tests for free. You get the others with a Law Hub Advantage subscription. Well worth the investment. That's where I would start. I see Maya's asking, took a diagnostic test and got a 140. I was told to take the LSAT for accuracy, so I didn't answer all the questions. Okay, that's fine. I mean, listen, everyone's got to start somewhere. All that tells you is that you have not yet learned the language of the LSAT, but of course you can learn the language of the LSAT. You can improve significantly if you put in the work. You just got to build a strong foundation in the different sections and the different question types. Then work on pacing, work on your time management, doing individual sections. Then work on endurance. You've got thousands of practice questions you could study from. Just work through them bit by bit, going from the older up to the newer, and consider what your goal score is, and then give yourself adequate time to get to your goal. ICT's asking, do you see the LSAT changing in the near future to counter score inflation after the removal of logic games? So there are a couple of things actually that will potentially counter score inflation coming up. For those who aren't aware, LSAT scores have been rising over the past several years due to a number of LSAT format changes. The move of the LSAT from in-person to going online during the pandemic, the temporary LSAT Flex format, which was a shorter temporary format early in the pandemic, now the removal of logic games, but the LSAT is changing again. They are going back to in-person for almost everybody starting in August due to widespread cheating on the online LSAT format. And so part of what has allowed the cheating is the fact that it was online remotely from home. Some folks were abusing the online system, stealing LSAT unreleased content and selling these undisclosed exams. So the return to in-person will counter a lot of that. And the return to in-person will also be a less favorable format, I think. Part of what led to the score inflation is that it was more comfortable taking it from home. And so people, without the stress of the in-person environment, were able to get higher scores. But going back to in-person, I think, may drop scores a little bit. Another factor that may drop scores is the scoring of the currently unscored LSAT writing sample. The writing sample has always been unscored, but LSAC has indicated that sometime in the next couple of years, they're going to start scoring it. They even added a field to the score report called the writing ability score. It is still currently unscored, to be clear. The earliest they would score it is about a year from now. And when they do decide to score it finally, they will give plenty of notice in advance. But that could counteract the score inflation because that'll be yet another section of the LSAT to study. Whereas right now, you're only studying logical reasoning and reading comprehension. If you've got to study a third thing like writing, then you've got to divide your attention between 3 different things, not only 2. So that could lead to a bit of a drop in the score inflation. However, the biggest factor that is continuing to inflate scores is the rise in LSAT accommodations giving people extra time. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I see Sleep is asking, how do you feel about getting a master's degree before law school, like social work? To be frank, I mean, if you want to be a lawyer, I don't see why you need a separate master's degree. So it ultimately comes down to what are your career goals? What do you want to do with your law degree? I can't think of too many legal jobs that would require a social work master's in addition to your JD. If you want to be a lawyer, you just need the JD. Also consider the time and cost involved in getting a master's degree. Also consider that your master's GPA will not get factored into your GPA calculations in the law school admissions index. Only the undergraduate GPA counts. And so I say if you want to become a lawyer, if you want to get a JD, then just go straight to law school and skip the master's. If you want to get a master's in social work, by all means do it, but think about why. Do you really need it? Do you want to be a social worker or do you want to be a lawyer? Because you don't need to be both necessarily. Matt asks, what is your morning routine for the day of the LSAT? I wake up early, work out a bit, take a hot shower, eat a good breakfast, do some warm-up questions before the exam. If I'm taking it in person at a testing center, I would leave early, allow plenty of time to get there. I would know the route in advance, know how I'm getting there in advance, make sure my alarms are set, make sure my phone is charged. What else? Pack a bag with the snacks, number 2 pencils, all that good stuff. I'd be ready to go well in advance. I also wouldn't take the LSAT first thing in the morning just because it takes your brain a couple hours to wake up. If you're taking it remotely from home, then you're not commuting anywhere, but you want to make sure that your internet's strong, that your roommates, your family, significant other, they're not going to be streaming Netflix at the time of your exam. They're not doing Zoom calls during that time. You want to preserve your internet connection for your exam and nothing else. Did I miss anything? Feel free to ask any follow-ups. But I think the biggest thing I would emphasize is the warm-up questions. Do a favorite reading passage, a favorite couple of logical reasoning questions before the exam starts. So the first questions you're doing are not the ones that count. And yes, ESCO, the LSAT does still have the remote option, but the June LSAT this week is the last one that you could take remotely from home. Starting in August, it is in person for nearly everybody, with rare exceptions. And when you take it in person, it still is on a computer, not on paper, unless you have special paper accommodations. Alex is asking, is Boston University a good enough undergrad to get into a top law school with a good GPA or LSAT? So I'll say this, the prestige of your undergrad does not matter. Law schools don't care where you went to undergrad. They just care about your LSAT score, your GPA, and as a distant third, your soft factors like your application essays and your resume. But you don't need to have gone to an Ivy undergrad or a top undergrad for prestige when it comes to applying to law school. That does not matter in the slightest. By the way, for those just joining, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. If you find this helpful, please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives. The algorithm doesn't really boost them because I don't do anything crazy. I'm just answering LSAT and law school questions as straightforwardly as I can, not catering to the algorithm in any way. And so maybe I get punished a bit for that, but I just like answering questions and talking about this stuff. And so please spread the word, share it to your socials on TikTok, share it in Facebook groups, some subreddits, Discords, to your pre-law societies. The more this grows, the more I'll expand it over time. Mateo's asking, they keep notifying me about the extra $89 or whatever it is to wipe the score from the record. Is it worth it? So I think you're talking about the score preview option. LSAC has this option when you take the LSAT where you can pay to see your score before deciding whether to cancel your score. I honestly think this is a money grab on LSAC's part. There's no reason for it other than your peace of mind, which is worth something to be clear. But law schools don't average multiple LSAT scores. They only take into consideration the highest score on your record. And so if you cancel your score, they're going to assume it probably didn't go very well, but they're not going to count it, of course. If you have a low score, they're not going to count it. They'll count the higher score. And so it's really about you paying to hide the optics of a low score versus a cancellation, which will assume to be a low score which will be assumed to be a low score anyway. And so there's really no point to it unless it'll make you feel better to not have the low score being shown, which is worth something, of course, your peace of mind. And so if you can afford it, by all means, go for it, but there's no actual need for it. Esco's asking, would you recommend the GRE over the LSAT? No, I wouldn't, honestly. There are some law schools that will accept the GRE in lieu of the LSAT, technically speaking, but very few students, fewer than 5%, actually get into law school with a GRE score or anything other than an LSAT score. And so law schools make a lot of noise about this because they want to source more applicants, because if they can source more applicants, they can increase their selectivity, but they're casting a very wide net to people who would not necessarily ever have much of a chance anyway. And law schools get to, of course, get the application fees from these folks. Law schools like the LSAT because they find it useful. Even though they're not required to use the LSAT now and they can use another exam like the GRE, they still prefer the LSAT because it's correlated with first-year law school grades and bar passage rates, and law schools need to maintain their students' good grades and they want their students to pass the bar. If their students don't pass the bar, then they're at risk of losing their ABA accreditation. So law schools like the LSAT, and it's a way for you to show them that you're serious about law school in particular, that you're not just applying on a whim. And if you apply without the LSAT, it's a kind of like a red flag. It's like, why didn't this person take the LSAT? Is it because they would not have done well on it, which of course would be a major concern for them. And you never want admissions to have a question that's unresolved. You never want to leave them wondering why. And if you apply without the LSAT, then you're losing your scholarship negotiation leverage. The biggest reason law schools will give you scholarship money is because you can raise their GPA medians and their LSAT medians. And so if you apply without an LSAT, you're leaving out the biggest piece of leverage that you have to boost their rankings, which would be their biggest reason to give you scholarship money. And so it'd be a big missed opportunity to not apply with an LSAT. And of course, you also want to prove to yourself that you've got what it takes to succeed in law school. And if you can't get the LSAT score that would get you a leverage in admissions, it raises the question, will you do well in law school itself? Not saying there aren't exceptions, of course there are, but it's a good way for you to prove to yourself that you've got what it takes before making that six-figure bet when it comes to your tuition. Luke is asking, is there any reason to splurge on undergrad if planning to go to law school? So this comes back to the earlier question around the prestige of the undergrad institution, right? Like, why pay sticker for a fancy private university for undergrad if you're going to go to law school anyway, in which case the prestige of your law school will supersede the prestige of your undergrad? It's a very fair question. In fact, I've often recommended to folks that if there are certain law schools for them, they might want to go to a lower cost, say, public in-state university paying lower tuition for undergrad, saving some money, avoiding some debt, saving that money for law school, or just saving that money in the bank, avoiding the loans. The thing is, are you totally certain that law school is what you want to do? When you're deciding where to go to undergrad, when you're 17 in many cases, you can't say with 100% certainty that law school is what you want to do. And so it's kind of making a bet on the certainty of your future law school path versus whatever else you might do with your career, which may not even involve law school at all. And so the more prudent course of action might actually be to go to the most prestigious undergrad you can, then maintain a high GPA, get a high LSAT score, then get a full ride to law school. That could be the path. There's not a clear yes/no answer on this. There are no real solutions or optimal options here. It's only really more trade-offs about one path versus a different path. I'm just painting the different pros and cons of each course of action. You can ultimately choose what's best for you. What you could do, though, is go to a prestigious undergrad, even if private, even if you're paying a higher tuition, load up on credits, graduate in 3 years, not 4, save a whole year of tuition, maybe take some summer classes at a community college where you can get a high GPA, high grades there, and then save some money on the undergrad tuition by getting credits from the community college and finishing faster. That's another way to go. Just worth considering. By the way, folks, for those of you just joining, I'm offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for anybody watching this live now or later. You can book that free tutoring with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. What we do during those free tutoring lessons is we look at where you're currently at, what your goal score is, what your time frame is, then we map out an action plan to get you from here to there between now and then. If you want to talk through what that tutoring could look like, you can book that free, what that plan could look like. You can book the free tutoring at unpluggedprep.com/start. And if you haven't already, you can grab a free easy LSAT cheat sheet that I'm offering. It's a quick reference on everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension, covers all sections, all question types. It's a free download PDF. You can get it at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. In the meantime, all the best. Take care. Thanks for joining.